Hello again, viewers, and greetings, fellow space travelers. This is Thorn of Night, and welcome to my next episode in my bee breeding guide and tutorial, where I'm going to be covering, or at least trying to, cover everything I'm aware of, and try to cover all the things that I have just learned in the bee universe for Minecraft. In the previous episode, I went through and covered all the different types of hives you're going to be able to find in some of the basic getting starting gear, like the scoop and the bee house, which is still over here. In this episode, I'm going to be getting on to some more advanced stuff, the machines and whatnot you're going to need, because the bees are going to be producing lots of different types of things, and you're going to need to know what to do with them. So the first thing up here is called the centrifuge. And the way to make it is, first, in just a regular crafting table, you're going to need some bronze ingots to make this thing called a sturdy casing. And then you're going to need that sturdy casing, 2 glass, and 6 copper ingots like this to get one of these centrifuge guys. This is what the interface looks like, and the way this works is, if you have some power, like any sort of MJ power there, and you add these honeycomb that you're going to get from the various bees, and there's a whole bunch of different honeycomb. You take the honeycomb, you put it into the centrifuge, and if it's got power, it will process the different types of comb into its component parts. For instance, this one will, the plain honeycomb is likely to give you honey drops and beeswax. This mint comb here, though it is different from the honeycomb in all other respects, it will be the same output. There are lots of different combs that only give the honey drops and the beeswax, even though they have a different appearance. They come from different types of bees. They have different names. Still going to be basically the same output. However, there are some different outputs that you can get from some of the other kinds of comb, like for instance this lapis comb. And if you're sharp on guessing, you can predict that it will give you lapis lazuli, but it also gives you some beeswax. So you are going to need to begin processing this honeycomb pretty soon for some of the outputs, especially if that's the main reason you're breeding the bees. Wow, my tongue is tangled. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. Similarly, a device that runs off of MJ power is called the squeezer. And just like the centrifuge, it requires a sturdy casing, and it's the same pattern, only this time it takes 6 tin to create. And the squeezer is used with respect to the bees for processing these different types of drops that you're going to get out of it. For instance, the honey drops, which I got there. Toss it in here, and it will process, and you'll get this tiny little bit of honey from one drop. Or, and I'm going to have to, instead of processing it all individually, well, I guess I only need the 2. Put that back. Get rid of that. And put this in here. Get rid of that. Because you will have to either use capsules or pipes or buckets or different types of containers to get the liquid that the squeezer has processed out. Or, in the case of this tutorial, I just break it and put a new one down. Alright. Here's another type of drop that you can get from another kind of bee. It's called the juicy drop. And as you can imagine, it will give you a little bit of fruit juice. Next up on my little brief demo of this, an energy drop. Put it in here and nothing happens. Now, the reason for this is there are some drops that will not produce liquid. They are used for other things. For instance, this energy drop, you can guess, is used in making energy. But let's get a recipe up here to show you. This one specifically is used with honey drops to make a depleted honey crystal, which can be used for storing energy as a sort of portable battery. Or here's another one, the intellect drop. You're going to love this one because it is used for crafting actual bottles of enchanting. That's right, get some intellect drops in a glass bottle and you can just make a wonderful little tasty treat for leveling up. It's higher up there in the bees to get the intellect drops, but it's a great way of getting some experience. Not the best way out of the bees, but it's a good way. So that is going to cover the squeezer. So let's move on to the next thing. The Apiarist chest. And the way this is crafted is, don't process all your comb. You are going to need it. Take some comb in a U shape like that, like a boat or whatever. Put a normal chest in there and a normal bit of glass. You'll get this Apiarist chest. And like most chests, you can just right-click and store stuff in it. Specifically, this will take bees. It can hold 5 of these pages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that comes to 125 item slots of bees. Certain kinds of drones can stack and occupy one spot up to a stack, but princesses will only be able to occupy one spot each, so keep that in mind. It also keeps a tally of the different, some of the different types of combinations, and it also is aware of different species that aren't even in the mod packs you are using, apparently. There are a lot fewer than 241 in this mod pack, which is the Unleashed mod pack in the Feed the Beast mod pack family, which if you haven't gotten Feed the Beast yet, go get it. You will love it immensely. But let's move on to the next thing. The Apiarist backpack. The recipe for it is using an Apiarist chest, some wool, some sticks, and some string. You'll get this little device here, the Apiarist backpack. And why don't I just copy that and leave this in here. The backpack, just like many, or all rather, of the other forestry backpacks, is an item where you can, while it's in your hotbar, right-click on it to open an interface. Just like the chest, it has the 125 slots and this information here. However, you can, if you shift and right-click while holding it, you can get that little locking symbol on it, which will notify you that any bees you pick up on the ground won't go into the bag. You can have this arrow up by shift right-clicking again, which will allow you to take the entire inventory that the bag contains, go up to a chest of any sort, and shift right-click, and it will take the items from that chest, put it in the bag if they are bees. Also, if you have the arrow down, reverse thing, it will take the items in the bag and put them into the chest. So that's the Apiarist bag. Next thing is the Carpenter. Now this isn't specifically a bee breeding tool. However, it is absolutely necessary for moving on with the rest of the machines. So the recipe for this here is another one of these sturdy casings, some more glass, and this time some bronze ingots like that. You'll get one Carpenter, and this device has an interface here where you can put a pattern. Say I want to make a pattern that uses some backpacks and some lapis and I don't know, and intellect drop or something. They are phantom items when you put them in here, and this isn't really an actual pattern, but you put the supplies for that pattern down here. You supply it with energy, MJ energy, and you have to feed it a fluid. It's either going to be water or seed oil, which is gotten from the squeezer. Also, I forgot to mention that. Apologies. You take seeds that you find on the ground, or some of the nuts and fruits that you can get from forestry. You toss it into the squeezer, and it will produce seed oil, which you will have to extract from the squeezer as well. But you take seed oil or water, whatever it asks for the recipe, put the ingredients there, and it will process the ingredients in the shape of the recipe to give you an output here. I don't think that it can stack items. I'm not sure. Maybe it can. It should be able to stack items in the output, but I've never stood around long enough to wait for multiple things to stack in these things. So I guess I should have tested that, but it's just a regular normal output, and you can connect it to pipes and whatnot. The next thing, and this is more of a novelty dynamic that's been added recently. It's called the Escritoire. You need the Carpenter and some seed oil. Here's an example, or several examples of containers for seed oil. You put the seed oil up in here. You supply the items that the pattern calls for down in this area, and it will spit out one of these escritoires. Now, this is kind of interesting. It's sort of, wow, it's spread out. There we go. It's sort of like a game. You take a bee, put it in there, and then you take a couple of bees, put them over here like this, or you can just do one at a time, and it will show you sort of like a memory game where this water drone, for instance, and this noble drone, they're all going to be different pretty much every time you do this. But it's not exactly like a memory game. If I know that there's a water drone here and a noble drone here, and later on I reveal one of these by doing that again. So I know that there's a water drone there. I know there's a water drone there. If I click on this and this, I lose. So what you have to do is take the outputs like that and wait for a pair. You click on them and they are solid. They stay put from now on. There we go. There's another pair. Click on the noble drones here, and I have to click again over here with some bees to get some water drones. But the output is some sort of prize, like honeycomb, for instance, and a recipe that you do not know yet. So, I put it up there. I have this recipe, and I can mouse over it, and it says, mutation discovered, forest and meadows, has a high chance of creating the species common. You take this note, which is named after you since you discovered it, and right click it, and it will add the information to your bee database. If, however, you already know what it says, like you saw down the bottom right over there, or bottom left, it says you already memorized this information, it will just give you that alert, and you have to just store this away until you can find something to do with it, like give it to another person. You can keep relearning the same things you already know, which is unfortunate, but eventually you can hopefully learn all the recipes for all the bees, because there are so many of them. It will take a very long time just experimenting, trying to get this one to breed with that one, and finding out after 1,000 tries that it just doesn't do anything. It's a lot less painful this way, and you get a reward for studying. You get some more honeycomb. But anyway, moving on. The apiary. In the last episode, or the last video, I showed you the bee house. The apiary is the upgrade to the bee house. You can use it to find out what the conditions are, and it is nighttime. Let me make it brighter here. what the conditions are for the environment that you're in by placing it down. And it also does add 3 slots here for adding frames. And I will be covering frames in a later video when I cover the Apiary, which is the upgrade to this. But the frames can go in here, up to 3 of them. Princess, drone, and this is where the output goes. Now, one major difference between the apiary and the bee house is if you want to start doing your breeding, this is where it starts, the apiary. You can take different species, mix them together, and get a chance of a whole new species over here, which is impossible with the bee house over there. Now, the recipe for the apiary is going to, first off, require you doing something in a carpenter. You're going to have to take 8 wood logs, like this, provide it some seed oil and some power to get this thing called an impregnated casing. Then you take the impregnated casing, just some regular planks, some regular slabs, and you'll get one of these apiaries. Place it anywhere and you can find out what the conditions are and you can start doing your bee breeding. Alright, next, since you're going to be starting dealing with all kinds of different bees, especially ones that can give you some pretty bad mojo, it's going to be imperative that you start protecting yourself. In order to do this, let's get some armor for, specifically, an apiarist. You get the apiarist hat, the shirt, the pants, and the shoes. And if I hit a 5 here, you can see what it looks like. And there's the backpack on my back. And there's me under the little bee hat there. That's the way it looks, and it's the same sort of design of recipe for the different armor types that you would have for regular armor. However, it uses this stuff called woven silk. Here's where it gets hairy for this. Woven silk comes from processing silky propolis. You process the silky propolis in a centrifuge, and it will stand a chance of giving you propolis and silk wisps. The silky propolis comes from silky combs, which only come from bees in the tropical line. So you are going to have to deal with tropical bees, which give you a negative status effect. They start stinging you, or poisoning you rather, in order to get something that helps prevent you from being poisoned. That's where the bee suit comes into play. You wear a whole suit of this apiarist armor, and most, not all, most of the negative effects of some of these species of bees will just not even faze you. Like the poison from this, nausea from that, blindness from this one, withering from this one. There are all kinds of different status effects, which I will be going into in the next episode in detail. But this will prevent most of those symptoms from occurring to your character. Now, in order to get the actual woven silk, before I get too carried on, you need 9 silk wisps in a carpenter, and you need to add water and, of course, some sort of power like that. And it will process this into the silk wisps here, or the woven silk here, that you will need 24 of to get an entire suit of armor. So, make that a goal if you're going to start dealing with some of these more toxic bees. Next thing is the Beealyzer. Now this little puppy here, I think I have one on me, yes, takes the Carpenter to create. It uses water over here, and it will obviously also need MJ power, and it requires 1 diamond, 2 redstone. Why don't I have 2 redstone? Oh well. 4 tin ingots, 2 glass panes, and that's what these are, glass panes. In this orientation, it will give you 1 of these Beealyzers. Now this Beealyzer is awesome because it helps you figure out exactly what your bee is. So this is also going to be one of your early goals for doing the bee breeding. Here's the interface for the Beealyzer. It takes honey drops or honeydew, some sort of honey drop thing up here, to, I guess, power it. And you take some bees. Let's get some bees in here. Let's go Marshy. Marshy, unknown genome. Alright. We have a Marshy drone. We don't know anything about it by hitting shift. But if you take the bee, put it in this spot here where the question mark is, it spits it down here after analyzing it, and it tells you all the stats you need to know. Lifespan, speed, pollination, flowers, fertility, the area that it has, and that's in one direction. So it's 9 in each direction. I don't know why it says 9 by, well, no, it's going to be a total of 19 across, 19 front and back, and 13 top to bottom. For some reason, this doesn't actually reflect its actual area of territory. It's 9 in one direction, 9 in the other, in the opposite direction, so it adds up to 18 plus the one it's in, so 19 across. Anyway, the effect of the Marshy bee here, the Marshy drone, none. And then if you take the bee out and put it into the second slot here, it'll tell you the active and inactive traits, the climate it likes, the temperature and humidity tolerances, whether it's daytime, nighttime, flyer, cave, and also how many generations it has been in captivity. This one I just spawned from over here, so it's 0 generations. Next spot, possible produce is this here, which is the mossy comb, and it doesn't have any special or possible specialty outputs for this species of bee, but some do. Then if you put it in this one, it tells you all the different bee breeding options that there are with the bee. So for instance, I know that this one goes with this one, or this goes with that, and that, and that, and these and those. It doesn't tell you what the names are by mousing over them, but it shows you how many you've done. Now, the reason why I have a lot of these as question marks is because some of them are redundant. Like, there are multiple ways of making common bees, but I'll be getting to that in a later episode. So, I know the recipes, the main recipes for the Marshy bees, and then that's where that is. Anyway, the next spot is just sort of entertaining information. Tells the classification, which on some bees, this is pretty much blank all the way down to the bottom. And then a quote of some sort, if it's applicable, and where the quote is purported to have come from down there. Basically, number 5 is just for entertainment purposes. Alright. Now, I think that is pretty much all I'm going to be covering in this episode, because I have a lot of other things I need to cover and set up for additional episodes, and I don't want these to drag out too terribly long. So, if I missed any details for these devices here, I apologize, and please let me know so I can maybe type them out in the description or something. But either way, thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, leave them in the comment section below, or inbox me, or whatever. I will do my best to get back to you. If you like this video and like what I'm doing here, please feel free to give it a like. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. I definitely appreciate it, because I've got a lot more stuff coming out, including this series and all of my other ones. And also, I am looking forward to hearing from you guys for any ideas you have for making a video game series in the future. Now, one last thing before I let you go here is I'm making this map available for download in the description below. And the reason why is not over here. It is through this book. And I'm going to cut here to go in, because while I'm recording I have a hard time jumping between Mistcraft ages, so I'll be right back. Okay, it didn't crash this time, thank goodness. Alright, Now, this is what I call the landing, and what it has is access to a sort of map of where all the different branches of bees come from, or what you use the bees to make for the branches. There are some that are way out here that require lots of preliminary breeding. Some of them are pretty much right off the bat. You start in here, brief rundown. You spawn in on this spot, and you have access to this thing called the heroic branch, the primary branch, the festive branch, and then the Apes. Api is where we get the word apiary and apiculture. It basically means bee. But anyway, through all of these different linking books that are in each room here, you have access to all the different branches of bees, so you can see what they look like, see what you use to make them, what their outputs are, all that kind of stuff. And a little bit of space for you to do some experimenting of your own to get familiar with the bee breeding, so you don't have to deal with it on your map and chance messing up your map while dealing with some of these rather hostile bees. But basically, I'm going to be covering all the branches in the rest of this series after I'm done with a few preliminary videos here. So keep an eye out for that. But please do feel free to just go ahead and download this and explore and wander around. I've made it so all the worlds that you go to, as if you decide to explore, if you get lost, go back to 00, and you will be right back at the spawn-in point for the world, so it's really easy to find your way around. But that is where I'm going to have to leave off for this video, so thank you once again for watching. This is Thorn of Night, and I will talk to you later.